Hey guys, it's Rishabh, and I'm walking to the library to get some work done, but I thought I'd catch up on this YouTube channel and film another video about a topic. I posted some topics in the Discord last week and saw that the most highly voted one was about how you should choose, what's the right path for you? How do you really figure out kind of your passion and determine what your calling is? And I think the right answer to this is, don't listen to me, right? Go to the 60 or 70-year-olds who have had long careers and have tried out so many different things and have been, way more successful than I have. That's, the short answer. The long answer is that as a 20-year-old, a couple years into college, I've made some mistakes myself. And I have learned a couple things that I want to share with you guys. But once again, really, take it with a grain of salt, just because I do think that for these sort of big questions, you're going to want to hear from, I think, the most, authentic source possible, which is people who have really done it and who have made it. I'm still in that process and figuring out that journey. So, maybe I don't have the best takes. And if you're still watching, that means that you're deeply interested in what I have to say. So I appreciate that. And let's kind of dive into it. So let me see if I can sit on this log and talk for a little bit. Fortunately, there's some insects and stuff. Let me check this side. Okay, this side looks substantially better, so let's try this. It's the first vlogging style thing that I've done in a while. Let's see here. That is not working at all. Okay, we're at an angle, so we're gonna keep walking for now. Maybe this is just going to be a walking style video. Let's do that. So I think in the last few years of college, one of my biggest learnings has really been to not plan too much. There's I would say a pretty good balance between planning and just completely going with the flow for career and work related things. I think in high school, in the latter years of high school, students, including myself, right, the approach they took is, let's choose one specific goal and then go all or nothing on that one goal. And I would say that there, maybe that's a minority, but that, that path definitely exists. And in my view, I actually think that a lot of those students are very successful in doing that, and that's where you'll see the most in terms of my last YouTube channel, right? I talked a lot about science fair and college admissions and things like this. That's where you would see a lot of that, because it's hey, let me choose one goal, which is I'm going to become the International Math Olympiad winner. And so I'm going to train from middle school to high school on this one goal. And I don't really care about, anything else. And that ends up leading to a lot of success, because if you don't do that, you don't really stand a chance. And so naturally, when you look at all the winners and you look at all the admittees to those top colleges and so forth, you see that same thing, right? But I think that strategy is not the best thing to do, especially in college. The reason I say that is because there are so many more opportunities you get introduced to when you move out of your small town. Now, for those of you who are from Phillips Exeter or some private high school watching this video, I think this advice I'm giving for, as you transition into college probably holds true for you guys, because you have so many opportunities in your local area. You're introduced to those, what those are kind of at a younger time compared to most people. So I went to a public school. I didn't know anything career-wise besides maybe two options, which was it seems to be pretty well off and to have to be what it means to be ambitious and so forth is let me make a good impact either in technology or in science. And those were the kind of two things that really resonated with me. I liked them a lot as well. And so that's what I pursued. And in college, your first 6 months, you realize wait, okay, there are actually 20,000 different fields I could pursue. And so then if you come in with this one specific goal, you're not really taking the time to explore and evaluate those different things. And I think that's what could lead to problematic outcomes later on, midlife crises and, entering graduate school and not knowing what to do, or not liking it, or entering into a career and, performing badly in it because you haven't really thought it through and spent that time. And I have spoken to a few mentors who made, one specific very small goal that they just kind of followed throughout their entire college years, and then they were successful at it. And then 5, 6, 7 years later, they actually transitioned out of that career because they realized, wait, I wish I had explored a little bit more in undergrad, or like spent more time thinking about that. So yeah, that's like one of my biggest learnings is just kind of like early on into college. I think like first 6 months, spend that time probably exploring a little bit more. And that's the cliche advice you'll get is like, hey, you should really change as a person, and you should think everything through rather than jumping in straight onto one specific path. And I think that's what a lot of students do. But at some of the very prestigious quote unquote prestigious universities, right, you'll see a lot of students who are blindly committed to one path because that's like kind of what brought them success in secondary school, like in high school, because like they were able to become the very best at that one thing. And I think it's totally fine to spend, even all 4 years of your undergrad, why not, like exploring. And then, when you're 24, 25, 26, 27, later in your career, then maybe lock down onto, 1 or 2 things that you're really passionate about and that you figured out. So that's like one kind of big piece of the puzzle. I think the next one is just trying to then, once you're exploring, what does it mean to explore, and how do you find your passion? And so for me, I'll just tell you about how I kind of found my thing. And once again, like in terms of an overall formula and methodology, there are probably people who have summarized that in a better way than I can. But so to that extent, let me just share my own journey through it. And I think my own journey was to trying things was, don't get too caught up in researching it all, like doing a bunch of Google searches and trying to like figure that piece out. I think it can actually be a lot more beneficial to jump straight into things. So what that means is like, hey, I'll just choose an example, like, one of my passions, or like I think, is like creating content, right? And so rather than looking at other people who are creating content and trying to evaluate, is this something I want to do for myself? I think you should just make content yourself. And people are like scared because there's this barrier to entry for like all of these things. That's hard, but you really just need to like, just try it and do that. And once you do, I think you get a much clearer picture of how much you like it and what it involves and what it's going to be like than you would have otherwise. So I think I would really suggest you just actually, do the thing. And be like, and have high agency and be action oriented with these things, rather than solely focusing on trying to like plan and figure out the most ideal outcome. Because the answer is like, you're probably not going to be able to do that, at least in your first iteration of it anyway. And so based off of that, then how do you figure out like, okay, I've tried these things. How do I know if I am passionate about it? I would say there's probably a few indicators, and I'm going to give like sort of the practical thing rather than the sort of magical feeling that's described to people, which is like, I don't think you'll ever truly love every aspect of something, but like there will be noticeable moments. Like for me, where it's like when I'm passionate about something, it'll be midnight, and rather than wanting to sleep and get my 8 hours, which is something that's pretty important to me. Like I like to, to get like the right amount of sleep every night and work out at the same time every day and kind of optimize my schedule like that. The times where I'm able to actually overcome that barrier and continue working and diving deep onto something, I think that's like a clear indication that like you could be passionate about it. But it's also important to realize like that if you keep doing that a couple times and it starts to waver, like you get kind of obsessed with something like a video game, for instance, and it's so enrapturing, and it takes up all your time and so forth. And then a couple hours later, it's like or a couple days later, if you either get one of the two feelings, which is like, one, I don't think I can stay up tonight to keep doing that, or like I don't really feel like it as much, or two, you actually regret having done it a couple nights ago or whatever, that's like a clear indication that, okay, that's not something you're actually passionate about. It's just something that you were temporarily kind of enraptured by, and that's totally okay. But, you know, maybe it's like more of a hobby rather than, you know, a passion. Because I think a passion is something that also makes you feel gratified and fulfilled doing. So it's not like a video game, because at least for me, after, you know, when I was younger and used to play video games, I think it was like, after playing, you know, a couple days later, you almost like slightly regret that time that was wasted, or, you know, wished I had done something more productive or so forth. With your passion, it won't really feel like that, because you feel accomplished and gratified in doing what you were doing, or you were learning something and that makes you feel good. So I think that is kind of my second piece of advice on that, which is like, try things, do things, and based off of that, try to figure out the things that, you know, you're more passionate about. And then I guess the third thing, and you know, this is going to be really catered to the audience, who I think is a few hundred, you know, high school kind of listeners here. I think you guys should, you know, really stop looking at other people and focus on yourself for a moment, because like other people often are not right. Like, and by that I mean comparing to your classmates and colleagues, and you know, oftentimes the path that they're going on might be a dead end, or it might not be right. And so what I mean by that is, like, for instance, in high school, in very early high school, I remember 9th or 10th grade, right? There was, I remember there's a good chunk of ambitious students at my school who were like, oh, I want to become a doctor, and I want to practice, you know, XYZ specialty when I grow up. And, you know, those are totally okay goals to have. And I think a lot of, you know, as ambitious kids will have those goals pretty early on, that like, I'm going to do, you know, the highest level of education possible. I'm going to become super specialized in like this one thing, and make a lot of impact in that. And that's a great thing. But you shouldn't look at, you know, other people around you in that scenario and say like, oh, this must be, you know, the best thing. This must be like the ambitious thing that I have to go for, because it's just not. It's not accurate. Those people, in especially in high school, you know, they don't know what the reality of that career and what that passion actually is. They only know like a, you know, small window into it, like a 1 to 5% window into what that's going to look like, and they're basing it off of that, or maybe they're basing it off of family experiences, like an uncle who's a doctor. Or an aunt who's, you know, doing XYZ career, and that's why they feel motivated to do it. And once again, that doesn't mean that, you know, you have to follow that. And so let me describe, you know, my personal experience with that. Like, once again, 9th, 10th grade, a bunch of people were doing stuff like that. And so they were joining like the HOSA club, and doing all of this like pre-med volunteering and shadowing, and they're preparing for these BSMD interviews, and so forth. And I can confidently say like 99% of those people are actively have dropped like the idea of pursuing a career in medicine and so forth, which is, once again, that's okay. People's ideas change. But then if you knew from the beginning, like, oh, I'm not actually interested in this, and you gaslight yourself into following what those other people are doing, and then later on kind of realize the same thing, like, or differently, it's not, you know, it's not a great use of your time, in my opinion. And so I was able to, you know, successfully avoid that, and I think that helped me a lot, which was, you know, staying a little bit more open to what I wanted to pursue, and rather than just, you know, looking at a specific subject, like I was interested in learning more about this, so I would, you know, pay attention in that class and do research on that topic and so forth, to just like learn, rather than immediately committing to like the career choice based off of that, and pursuing volunteering and all these extracurricular activities to support that. So yeah, just like don't fall, you know, and the same cycles repeat. I think in undergrad, there's like a lot of FOMO with, you know, like if you go to a school that's like finance heavy, maybe you're gonna get FOMO related to that. If you go to a school that's like pre-med heavy, you're gonna get FOMO related to that. If you go to a school that's startup heavy, you're gonna, like, for instance, Stanford, you're gonna get pulled into that. But you look into those statistics of how many people actually then pursue that or are successful at it, and it's low. Like, it's super low. So it makes you think like, oh, is that even necessary, or was that worth doing? And I think the answer is no. Like, for reference for what I'm describing, right? For Stanford, I think that, the raw percentage of, or the actual number of startups as well that have had, huge success, like became like a unicorn level or something like that, $1 billion valuation, is actually, percentage wise lower, which makes sense because there's a bunch of kids pursuing startup, so that's fine. But I think the actual like raw quantity as well is lower, which is like not good, because that shows like you're bringing in people who don't have a clear direction or an actual passion for it, and they're actually just getting quite a bit of FOMO about it because they see a bunch of other people around them pursuing that thing, and so they start thinking, okay, I want to pursue that as well. And so, that's obviously one example. I'm sure you could find examples contrary to that, and that's totally fine. But that's at least my thesis on that, and that's my argument. So yeah, I hope those 3 points were like pretty helpful, and I hope you got some insight into at least the way that I thought about these things in the last couple of years. And of course, my thesis and my thoughts on this are going to be constantly changing. So obviously keep that in mind. But yeah, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.